In this video, we're going to get into another element of why mass gain diets are not the best type of approach for long-term maintenance of testosterone levels. And this is because of insulin sensitivity versus insulin resistance. Now, another thing that we must consider with long-term observation of caloric surplus is insulin. The way that this mass gain process reacts to insulin, the way that insulin reacts to this process, and the results that this produces. Now, high blood sugar and diabetes have long been associated with low testosterone and erectile dysfunction. Just the diabetes medication alone can cause low testosterone and erectile dysfunction. So for the purposes of good health, healthy testosterone levels, this is something we should want to avoid. Now, we want to be aiming for insulin sensitivity and not insulin resistance. Now, intense physical activity increases insulin sensitivity. This is a good thing. Physical activity can also lower your blood glucose levels for up to 24 hours after exercise, which makes your body more sensitive to insulin. Now, provided, of course, that your body is in a state of balance already. Maintaining good insulin sensitivity is conducive to the long-term maintenance of healthy testosterone levels. So what is insulin sensitivity? Insulin sensitivity refers to the sensitivity to which the cells in your body respond to insulin. Insulin is a hormone secreted in the pancreas to help regulate blood glucose levels. If you have low insulin sensitivity, this can lead to various health problems. Now, one of the obvious problems that can occur is the development of insulin resistance, which often leads to the development of diabetes. Insulin resistance happens when your body is having difficulty metabolizing glucose, and when this occurs, it can often indicate that you've got other health problems or other imbalances present within the body. If you have low insulin sensitivity, the body will try to compensate for this by producing more insulin to metabolize glucose and convert it into energy. And remaining in this state for any length of time is how insulin resistance develops. A high level of circulating insulin is also associated with the development of many other health problems, for example, damage to blood vessels, high blood pressure, even heart disease, like in extreme cases. So in terms of health markers and the long-term maintenance of testosterone levels, high circulating insulin and the development of insulin resistance is something to be avoided. Now, when it comes to dietary factors and nutrition intake, it's long been understood that carbohydrates tend to produce insulin or react to insulin at much higher levels, or a high insulin response. Proteins tend to have a moderate insulin response, and fats are said to have minimal impact. The obvious strategy when you consider that information is that a low-carb diet would naturally reduce the chances of developing insulin resistance, and of course this is true to an extent, but not completely true in terms of mass gain anyway. A ketogenic or carnivore diet is typically high in fat. The body is trained on these diets or educated to consume fat for energy instead of carbs, and the studies and the data confirm that it's a great option for weight loss and cutting cycles, not necessarily for mass gain, especially when combined with intense physical activity. Now, in a study from Loughborough University, it was demonstrated in healthy male subjects that engage in regular exercise that a single day of high fat overfeeding, in other words caloric surplus, is sufficient to impair whole body insulin sensitivities in young healthy individuals. Now, the data from this study demonstrates the speed with which high fat overfeeding can negatively affect glycemic control. As of today, it's not known the effects of long-term adherence to such a regime, but logic and reason suggests that The results would either remain consistent over time or even progressively get worse. After all, it's widely accepted that excessive amounts of dietary fat consumed for several days or weeks impairs glycemic control, which often leads to increased blood sugar above to what are considered to be normal levels. Now, the paper is entitled A Single Day of Excessive Dietary Fat Intake Reduces Whole Body Insulin Sensitivity, the Metabolic Consequence of Binge Eating. There is a link in the description down below to that study. It makes interesting reading. Now, that considered, the next thing to define is what causes insulin resistance. There are many factors that can contribute towards the development of insulin resistance. Now, when it comes to mass gain in particular, one of the things that can cause insulin resistance is increased levels of free fatty acids in your blood. This can cause your cells to stop responding properly to insulin, meaning that your insulin sensitivity is declining in spite of the intense physical activity. Now, the main causes of higher levels of free fatty acids in the blood are the consumption of too many calories, observing a caloric surplus, and the presence of excess visceral fat. Now, the fat part I will go into in the next video. For now, it's sufficient to say that visceral fat releases many free fatty acids into the blood, as well as inflammatory hormones that promote insulin resistance. Now, when it comes to any muscle building or muscle maintenance efforts, your body needs a balanced diet from various food sources to optimize energy levels and optimize muscle gain or muscular maintenance. While proteins and fats are an essential part of this process, you're going to need carbohydrates to fuel your body and muscles for peak performance. Regardless of all this talk online about your body doesn't need carbs, athletes perform better on carbs, it's not all entirely true. It's just activism on the part of the carnivores. Without carbs, the whole mass gain effort is going to be retarded. It's a fact. Carbs are essential for muscle growth, fueling the body, and especially for mass gain. Carbs are needed to replenish glycogen stores. Without sufficient glycogen replenishment, there will be insufficient energy to perform intense workouts. This fact can't be avoided. Also, without sufficient carb intake, your body can't make enough protein to repair the damaged muscle tissue and effect a good recovery. So without carbs, you will have a slower recovery rate. When this happens, the body will break down existing muscle tissue to create energy, leading to muscle loss and increased recovery time. This process is known as gluconeogenesis, if you want to go and look that up. Now, for these reasons, men following mass gain diets must include carbs in their diet. So because of all of this, the typical mass gain diet with prolonged caloric surplus and the increased meal frequency, it inevitably leads to prolonged or increased insulin production, or even almost continuous insulin production in some cases. The amount of the necessary high amounts of calories, proteins, fat and carbohydrates associated with bulking will spike insulin to convert all the extra food into energy to be used by the body, and this is of course a completely natural process. This happens to help the body convert the food into energy. This is what we're consuming the food for in the first place, to replenish our energy levels. But eating more volume and with more frequency means that more insulin will be needed to convert the extra food into energy. This over time, and when I say over time I mean a period of years, will lead to sustained overproduction of insulin, and this could eventually lead to pancreatic dysfunction, the development of insulin resistance, and an imbalance in the endocrine system. After all, the pancreas is one of the organs of the endocrine system. Any imbalance within the endocrine system will negatively affect testosterone in some way. This is why bulking and mass gain diets are linked with an increased risk of insulin resistance and diabetes. This is a well-established fact. That information is freely available and easy to find online. And observed long-term, can be detrimental to testosterone levels. For those observing the lean and wiry physique, which happens to be the optimum physique for testosterone levels into old age, this is considerably less likely to occur. Now, in the next video, we will get into how mass gain affects fat. Subscribe to this channel and follow this series for more.